Nobody sets out to destroy their own life. Yet every day, lives fall apart, not in explosive moments, but in whispers, in glances, in texts never meant to be seen. Why are married women, those who vowed commitment, often the easiest to lure into temptation? The truth is darker than most are willing to admit. And it begins with silence, with the slow death of connection, and a void no one talks about. Until now. Most people don't wake up one morning thinking, today I'll ruin everything I've built. But life doesn't collapse in a single catastrophic decision. It crumbles, quietly, bit by bit. Through a series of small, seemingly harmless moments, a casual text, a lingering glance, a racing heartbeat when her phone buzzes, and it's not her husband. Psychologists have studied this phenomenon for decades. They call it the slow erosion of boundaries. It begins innocently enough, but one unchecked thought leads to another. One blurred line leads to the next, until one day she looks in the mirror and sees a stranger looking back. So the question is this: why are some married women more easily pulled into emotional or even physical affairs? And deeper still, how do they justify it to themselves? Let's dig into the raw truth. Let's talk about what no one dares to say out loud. 1. The unspoken void. Why some married women seek external attention. As actress Helen Mirren once said, "A great marriage is a great partnership." And like any partnership, it requires nurturing, respect, and most of all, connection. But even in marriages that begin strong, time has a way of wearing things down. What starts as passion turns into routine. What was once flirtation becomes obligation, and slowly, invisibility creeps in. Many women don't seek affairs out of lust. They don't want to escape their marriage. What they crave is something more primal, more buried, the need to feel seen. In the early days, everything felt electric, long, deep conversations at night. That look in his eyes that said, "You're my world," a simple touch that carried the weight of affection. But now, talks revolve around school schedules, grocery lists, and bills. The intimacy fades, and in its place, silence. This is where the danger begins. Dr. John Gottman, one of the most respected relationship psychologists in the world, explains that the real killer of relationships isn't conflict, it's indifference. When a woman starts to feel unnoticed, unvalued, and emotionally abandoned, something shifts in her mind. Subconsciously, she starts seeking attention, validation, even admiration elsewhere. And it doesn't always happen with intention. Often it's subtle, a smile from a stranger that lights something inside her. A co-worker's compliment that lingers longer than it should. A conversation with an old friend that feels more alive than the one she had with her spouse last night. Most of the time it's not about cheating. It's about feeling again. Let's go deeper. In the next section, we'll explore how emotional neglect creates cracks in the foundation of even the strongest marriages, and how those cracks turn into chasms. When emotional connection fades, even the smallest spark can feel like a wildfire. What happens next? The answer is far more psychological than people realize. Even the simplest compliment from someone who isn't her husband can feel like a breath of fresh air to a woman who's felt invisible for years. A short conversation with a man who actually listens, who makes her feel intriguing again. It's not just flattering, it's intoxicating. That one moment, seemingly innocent, feels like oxygen after years of suffocation. Because let's be honest, marriage comes with a set of responsibilities. Stability, predictability, routine, and as much as these things offer safety, they also bury spontaneity. Excitement dies in the land of repetition. Psychologists have a term for this, the Coolidge effect, a phenomenon where novelty reignites desire. The new, the unknown, the unexpected, it triggers something primal in the brain. This isn't just about sex, it's about stimulation, about feeling something again. So imagine a woman who's been married for 7, 10, or even 15 years. Every day looks the same. Every conversation is about groceries, bills, or the kids. There are no surprises anymore, no mystery, no flirting. Then one day, someone gives her a look that lingers. Someone asks her a question that isn't about errands, and for a split second, she feels wanted again. It's not because she doesn't love her husband, it's not because she's immoral, it's because she misses that part of herself. The part that was desired, the part that used to turn heads without trying, as F. Scott Fitzgerald said, "We are most alive when we are in love. But love is not just about being together, it's about being chosen, again and again." When a woman feels like she's being chosen, desired, pursued, she feels powerful, beautiful, reconnected to a younger, more confident version of herself. And even if she has no intention of cheating, she might begin walking closer to that line. Why? Because in those moments, she feels alive again. Another reason that often goes unnoticed is something called social identity loss. After marriage, many women begin to feel like they're no longer individuals. They become someone's wife, someone's mom, the caregiver, the supporter, the glue that holds everything together. Before marriage, she had her own name, her own dreams, her own fire. She was a person, not just a role. But over time, that identity blurs. She's not her, she's his. Not who she is, but who she is to others. These roles, while noble, can feel limiting. Beautiful, but suffocating. Sacred, but identity erasing. So what happens? She may subconsciously seek out experiences that separate her from those roles. Moments where she feels like a woman, not a title, a conversation, a compliment, a connection with another man. It's not always about desire. It's about reclaiming a piece of herself. 2. The justification game. As the saying goes, the mind will always find a way to justify what the heart has already decided. No one just wakes up and says, "I'll betray my marriage today." It doesn't work that way. It's never that sudden. When a woman starts engaging in emotionally or physically risky behaviors, it almost always begins gradually. Tiny steps, tiny compromises. And behind every step is a silent voice saying, "It's not that bad. I deserve this. I've given so much. Isn't it okay to feel wanted, just once?" When emotions begin to replace commitment, the heart starts rewriting the rules. And often, the first line a woman crosses is the one she draws in her own mind. In the deepest corners of her mind, long before any action is taken, a mental shift begins. Because here's the brutal truth: guilt is heavy. And when something feels good but seems wrong, the mind goes into defense mode. If she can convince herself it's not really wrong, then she doesn't have to carry that unbearable guilt. So how does this happen? How do married women justify walking toward the line, then crossing it? At first, it's so innocent. It's just a little attention. What's the harm in texting? I'm just talking to him. It's not like I'm cheating. I just feel good when he compliments me. Is that a crime? This is where the danger begins, not with the act, but with the self-deception. Because the human brain is a master of creating stories to protect us from internal conflict. When our actions clash with our values, we feel what psychologists call cognitive dissonance, that internal discomfort that comes from knowing we're violating our own beliefs. And when the discomfort becomes too intense, the mind starts bending the truth. As physicist Richard Feynman once said, "The easiest person to fool is yourself." So now the woman who once valued loyalty and honesty begins shifting her internal narrative. She downplays her actions. It's just flirting. I'd never take it further. She shifts the blame. If my husband showed me more affection, I wouldn't even be here. She compartmentalizes. This has nothing to do with my marriage. This is just for me. But here's the catch. The more she justifies, the further she'll go. For many married women, the first betrayal isn't physical. It's emotional, and that's what makes it so dangerous, because with physical cheating, the line is obvious. You don't need a manual to know that kissing, touching, or sleeping with someone else is a violation. But emotional affairs, that's where the lines get blurry. Late-night texts, private conversations that go too deep, sharing secrets, fears, and longings with another man, secrets that used to belong to her husband. She tells herself, it's just emotional, I'm not doing anything wrong. But emotional intimacy is powerful. When a woman opens her heart, her thoughts, her vulnerabilities, she's already started detaching from her marriage. Cheating doesn't always begin in the bedroom, it begins in silence, in secrecy. The moment you start hiding things from your partner, you've already crossed the line. Known. And this is the true danger. Because when emotions are deeply involved, physical boundaries start to dissolve. The final rationalization, I deserve this. Perhaps the most dangerous mindset of all is the final justification, the belief that she deserves it. By now, she doesn't see her actions as morally grey. In her mind, they're earned. She's tolerated years of neglect. She's been selfless, patient, overlooked. So this moment of excitement, this attention, this secret joy, she tells herself it's justice, not betrayal. And that right there is the moment when the emotional wall between her and her husband becomes irreversible. When justification becomes a belief, boundaries dissolve, and what once felt unthinkable now feels deserved. I've sacrificed so much for this marriage. I deserve to feel good again. He's ignored me for years. If he doesn't care, why should I? I've been faithful all this time, and where has it gotten me? These are not just passing thoughts. They are the final mental defenses breaking down before the crossing of a line becomes inevitable. This is the point of no return. At this stage, the emotional connection she's formed with another man no longer feels like a temporary distraction. It feels more real than her actual marriage. Her mind, having rehearsed excuse after excuse, no longer sees this as betrayal. It now feels like justice, and once a person believes something is justified, what can stop them? This is why married women, despite appearances, can become emotionally vulnerable. It's not because they're immoral, not because they're weak, but because the human brain is built to rationalize what feels good. It starts with tiny excuses, microscopic cracks in the wall. Little justifications like, it's just talking, it's just attention, it's just lunch. But like water seeping through stone, those tiny cracks widen, and left unchecked, those justifications become actions, and once the line is crossed, there's no going back. 3. The breaking point. The chains of habit are too weak to be felt until they are too strong to be broken. Samuel Johnson. Every story has a moment where the game stops being a game, where flirtation stops being playful, where the messages stop being just talking, and it becomes real. The terrifying part? Most women don't even realize when that moment comes, not until it's already behind them. Psychologists refer to this as threshold theory, the idea that people often swear, "I'd never do that," until the first time they actually do. Because the hardest part, it isn't doing something wrong, it's doing it the first time. That first time she sends a message she knows she shouldn't. That first meetup that's just as friends. The first time his hand lingers on hers a little too long, and she doesn't pull away. That's the shift. Because after the first time, the second time gets easier, and then easier again. As Aristotle said, what we do repeatedly, we become. And before she knows it, what once felt forbidden now feels normal. Here's the biggest lie people tell themselves on a dangerous path. I can stop whenever I want. But can they? Not really. Because once the emotional attachment takes hold, it becomes addictive. Neuroscientists have found that romantic and sexual attraction activate the same brain pathways as drug addiction. The dopamine rush from this secret connection becomes intoxicating, like a hit of something she didn't even know she was craving. So even if she says, "This is the last time," she'll find a reason to go back. Because it's no longer about the man, it's about the way she feels when she's with him. At first, lying feels unnatural. The first time she hides a message, her heart races. But over time, the lies come easier, and with every secret kept, she moves one step further from who she used to be. The first lie is the hardest. But after that, the heart adapts, and the deception becomes second nature. The first time she lies about who she's texting, her heart races. It feels wrong. She hesitates for a moment, but then the human brain does what it's wired to do. It adapts. What once felt shameful now feels normal. And soon, the guilt doesn't just fade. It transforms into strategy. She gets better at covering her tracks, better at hiding messages, deleting conversations, managing timelines. She compartmentalizes her life so effectively that she starts believing it herself. She starts thinking, "This part of me has nothing to do with my marriage. I'm not hurting anyone. I can control this." But here's where the spiral begins. Because the longer the secret lives, the harder it is to let go. She tells herself, "I'll end it next week, next month, just one more conversation." But weeks turn into months, and before she knows it, she's stuck, trapped in the very web she spun to feel free. Here's the final shift, the one that signals she's gone too far. She no longer sees her husband as her primary relationship. He becomes the other man, the one at home, the background figure, because the real intimacy, the real emotional connection, now exists elsewhere. In her heart, someone else has taken the front seat. And this happens even if nothing physical has occurred, because once a woman's emotional world is tied to another man, the marriage is already broken, quietly, invisibly, from the inside out. At this stage, there are only two outcomes. One, she gets caught. Two, she walks away, because the emotional double life becomes too much to bear. So why do some married women become the easiest prey? Because they're not looking to cheat, they're looking to feel alive again, to feel noticed, desired, heard. And when they find that feeling again, even if it's wrong, even if it's fleeting, walking away from it feels impossible, not because they stopped loving their husbands, but because they've convinced themselves that this feeling, I'll never have it again at home. And once that belief is accepted as truth, nothing is ever the same again. But if you understand this truth, you hold something powerful. You hold the power of awareness, the power to read between the lines, the ability to see the silent red flags before they explode. When you understand how this emotional unraveling happens, you'll never be blind to the game again. This is Bright Stoicism. Until next time, take care and see you in the next video.